Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here.
You mentioned how many guys you play in rotations and things, and so I'm curious to see how you feel. I think it's nice to say, or the idea of playing a lot of guys. You know, there are a lot of guys give up their time, they work, and it'd be great to reward them on the floor. How many guys do you feel like you need to play, like really have to, if it came down to it?
Yeah. Our season was very interesting this year. We lost. We just got hammered at the same position really quickly, and so we had our starting five. He had a pretty major foot injury our last non-conference game, and he was a great player, missed a big chunk of the season, and then literally 2 games later, he was our starting 4 that we moved to the 5 and just kind of went small ball a little bit. He ended up having a different foot injury so like 2 guys at the same spot in 3 days. And so we had a guy who was redshirting until December 1st, a freshman who, we have a conversation with him. And then in March, he's playing 25 minutes in the conference.
Wow.
And he was redshirting until December. So there was a lot of shuffling this year that was not ideal, but our guys, they really, like people say next man up, but it truly was a next man up mentality.
In that situation, yeah. Yes.
I think comfortably 9, you need to have 9 people ready to go. The way we're 4 out, 1 in, and so you need probably 2 5s, 2 1s, and then, between 2, 3, and 4, probably 5 guys there. That's kind of how I think about it. That doesn't mean that we always do that. Some games we would play more and some games less, but I think making sure that you have people capable in those positions, again, so much that depends on your roster, right? If you have 1 or 2 just dudes, then they need to, at our level, 35 plus minutes a game.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then maybe, I know scheme affects a lot of that too, but 9 is the number that I feel like is a good number. And then sometimes that ends up being 8, sometimes 10 or so.
Yeah. I think you're right on the money. Scheme had a lot to do with it. And then at the high school game, 32 minutes is really short.
It is.
I've realized over the years, the idea of having a 9-10 man rotation, I've even tried to get to 11 and 12 some years. The years where we're going 11 and 12, maybe it means that we may not be as good as we could be, or I think we will be, or we just might not be that great, because if we have to go that deep, is that guy really keeping the slack or replacing what 1 through 5 can do? Well, I've gotten to the point now where 7 or 8, I'm very comfortable with that. But then you got to think about how big of a roster do you want, as a high school coach, do you want to keep? Because can you have 7 that play and 8 that just practice? I don't know how many guys really have a love of the game, love of the team, love of that role for that. So maybe a smaller roster, but then you're rolling the dice on health, sickness, grades, all those other things. So, but I've always wondered, or thought about, I like the idea of more, but man, when I get down to it in a 32-minute game, I think I can roll with 6 or 7.
Yeah, and at the high school level, if you're playing 11 or 12, then that's
hard.
Either you're probably blowing
your Duncanville, or
yeah, exactly. It's probably one end to the other of the spectrum. And 7, 7 to 8 sounds right. The high school level, college with 40 minutes, 8 or 9 again. 2.2 5s, and then between the 2 through 4 spot, having 5 who are playing between 35 and 10 minutes a game, basically. But as I'm thinking about freshmen, and this is a college thing, not a high school thing, but I'm thinking about freshmen. Can we get them to like 300 minutes a game, or 300 minutes for the season, right? If we're going to play 30 games, can we get them to 10 minutes a game? And if not, then they probably need to redshirt, and there's somebody else who can, you don't want to play 12 guys and everybody's, you look back at the end of the year and, hey, this kid only played, 80 minutes and he was a freshman. We could have developed him and maybe gotten him to 200 plus minutes as a redshirt freshman.
Yeah. And that's where the idea of development comes in, because a lot of parents, especially I feel like at the high school level, equate playing time with getting better, with development. And so I think it's up to us, whether it's at a parent meeting, in one-on-one meetings, with especially with the parents, getting to them as one of the major stakeholders in our players' lives. We have to help them see where development really happens. And so one of the things that I try to tell them is, if your son plays a lot, great. Like that's you're going to enjoy that, and it's because of his hard work. But if he doesn't, have him be a star or maximize that role during games, but he is still going to be developed. 43 minutes a day of skill work. But so many times they only think that on court time. Then you got to help them do the math there. If the game's 32 minutes, you cut in half offense, 16. Well, the best players are having the ball 90% of the time. That means the 2 or 3 minutes that you're going to split up amongst the other 8, how much development is Johnny getting, really? And so, but if you can help them get there, I think that maybe help with where with us, we may have more of that parent involvement that you have. But I would imagine for you too, development has to stay constant throughout so that everybody feels like they're improving.
You have to be intentional with it too, because if you're not, you get to the end of the year and you're like, man, because again, the same game analogy you're talking about is the same with practice, right? To where if you're not intentional, then you in practice you got 10 shots up, in live play, whatever, right? And I know coaches talk about that all the time, but like that's the reality is when you're a guy who doesn't have the ball in their hands a lot and you want to develop, what are you developing you're getting in better shape because you're running up and down the floor. But, so as coaches, like what you're saying, educating players, educating parents, but then intentionally building out that time. And it sounds like you're doing that. At the college level, we have to do that as well, to where we're making sure that the guys who aren't getting the game or practice experience are making the steps we need in our program to where they're ready in a year or two.
Coach, I'm giggling because I transported back to 2003, my senior year. 2002. It was the last year that Dave Bliss was at Baylor, and we're practicing it, and he was not intentional. And so he would come down sometimes like, Matt, I know that you know all this stuff today, so I'm going to have you on the white team. Well, crap, like it's not a compliment, coach. Like it means you're not working with me. Like I'm on the scout team. And so he tried to do it like in a nice way, but we're scrimmaging one day. And if Will Allen ever listens to this, like I hope he laughs, because Will was a freshman walk on, but he was a good player, played at Highland Park. And but he's a freshman, and we're scrimmaging. We're getting after. There's a long practice, and we get done, and we look over, and Will's kind of walking with us. I was like, Will, did you get in it all today? He goes, nope, saving my knees, just like MJ. It just maybe as soon as you said, like, yeah, guys might not get in, I was like, Will Allen, like, but it does. We get what we emphasize. If we emphasize skill work, we will work it into our plan. It will show up. We'll have to take away from things. Maybe even goes back to asking yourself what you can give control or lose control of. Like, what do we have to give up to make sure that the development across the board continues to happen?
Yep, no doubt. And again, it's the same thing in practice, right? Where especially once you get into game, you're playing 2 games a week, and you look over and you're like, did they get any reps at practice today? No, they were just sitting over there the whole time. So again, being intentional about development for everyone is and it keeps morale high too, right? And more buy-in probably.
Yeah, you don't want those walk-ons or those guys near the end of the bench thinking that they're just saving their knees, just like MJ. I think so many, especially maybe as a perfectionist, like you said, you're constantly trying to pick up new things, and it doesn't matter whether it's year 1 or year 40. I feel like most coaches are lifelong learners. So what are some of those things that you've borrowed lately that you really like?
One of the things that I've
Besides the Lion games, sorry.
I know I'm very excited to learn more about that. One of the things that has me excited finishing this first year is just thinking like, this may not be a great way to look at it, but this is the worst that I will ever be, hopefully, as a head coach. But if I just sit around and am not looking for ways to improve, then, I'm going to get the same results I got this year. So I've tried to be very intentional about reaching out to people, trying to learn from people. I was on a Zoom yesterday with a coach who I was like, I want to learn more about this part of your system or whatever. And he was very gracious to do that. And this isn't what you asked, and I'll get to that. But something I have learned that, that 22-year-old Weston did not know is that coaches are responsive and, for the most part, generous if you reach out. And so I've learned to ask. I've learned to, you can find an email really easily in 5 seconds or less. And don't be afraid to reach out to somebody that you want to learn from. People are willing to share, for the most part, not everybody, but most coaches are willing to share. And anything that we've done, I promise I did not come up with any of it, right? It's been learned from people I've worked for, people I've listened to, people I've observed, people, whatever. So never be afraid to reach out.
Real quick on that note, I think you're right on the money. Big motivation of doing this is I get one-on-one time with you. If nobody ever watches or listens to any of these, I'm good, because I have professional development time with a captive coach, like, that not many people get. But you're right. Doing this 3 years and asking a lot of people like you to come on, I rarely had a no answer or a no. And even, and then you just have to your point, you have to be okay with not getting a response. You have to be okay with a no, I'm busy, and say, hey, I appreciate that, maybe some other time. But have no fear in asking. But most people, you're right on the money, like to talk hoops.
Yeah, and lots of times it may be a no, not right now, but then keeping that option open for the future, and obviously being respectful of at the highest levels, being respectful of knowing who to talk to, right? The head coach at, Duke, Kansas, North Carolina, they're not.
Coach K won't respond to me. I just don't get it. That jerk,
So just, knowing, okay, I really love this thing about this team. And then who's maybe not the head coach, but who's maybe a support staff member or an assistant coach who would have some knowledge on that, and then going through that. And then, what they're going to say probably, hey, come to a practice. And what you're going to do when you go to a practice? You're going to get to meet the head coach, or you're going to get, there's just, there's so never be afraid to reach out. The best thing that I've borrowed lately. So this was something that we did with our team this year, and the benefits of it were tremendous. But there's an author speaker named Brett Ledbetter who does What Drives Winning. Are you familiar with Brett Ledbetter?
Heard the name. A lot of coaches have mentioned him over the years. I haven't. Yeah.
I mean, if you just go on YouTube for 10 seconds, you'll find tremendous videos. But this thing that he does, What Drives Winning, is all about development, the character development. And so, Brett, I believe I'm getting this right. I don't know Brett. I'm just a fan from a distance. But he started an organization, What Drives Winning, but he was a Division I basketball player who was very successful, but also just felt like maybe, we do a great job of developing the basketball piece, but maybe not so much the other stuff. And so he has several books: What Drives Winning Teams, What Drives Winning, something about maybe healthy environments, that kind of thing. So there's several books you can buy, but Brett works specifically with high-performing athletes, high-performing teams, not the Harding Bisons. Okay, so that's not where I'm going. But he does work with, Gonzaga men's basketball, Sabrina Ionescu when she was at Oregon, lots of successful people. And then he has conferences. He does a conference every year in the Dallas area with this organization, brings in lots of great coaches. So again, go to YouTube, check out his stuff. What he did, again, stolen everything we've done, is with Gonzaga, he did what they called PGMs, Personal Growth Mondays. And so it was an intentional time of development that he would run when he was in town or available. And then I think the strength coach ran it for some of the time. But we brought in somebody who is in the personal development, personal growth space. And this is a Harding alum. Again, I know not everyone has access to somebody like this, but there are ways to do this on a high school budget or at the high school level or wherever. But we have an alum who works in an MBA organization in the development space. He's trying to develop coaches, front office, employees, all those people. And he works with our team weekly, and we call them PGMs, but we changed it from Mondays to meetings just so we weren't stuck on the
Sure.
day of the week, but personal growth meetings. And we start off the year by saying, I know this isn't true for everyone, but what are the biggest things that can get in the way of your basketball team this year? Now, at some point, that may be ability, right? If you're playing a team that just totally outmatched, maybe. But that doesn't happen most of the time, at least at the college level, at our level. It doesn't happen. What gets in our way are all the non-basketball stuff, the selfishness, the divisiveness, the lack of discipline, all the, off the court things. And so what we try to do is again, this guy puts together a presentation. And so there may be a video of Nick Saban or Buzz Williams or whoever talking about something character related. And then we just have a discussion, and that can be a 10 to 15 minute discussion. I mean, you could do this as a coach. You just go to YouTube. The coaches always retweet, repost videos they like, right? Yeah. All you're doing is you're just taking it to your team, thinking of one or two discussion questions, and then you're just doing that week after week after week to where when those issues pop up during the season, you can go, hey, we talked about this 3 weeks. One of the things that happened this year was we achieved some success that the guys on our roster had never experienced before. And so it's like, how do you handle success? That was one of our weekly themes, and just emphasizing that success doesn't happen naturally, that you have to show up every day and do the work, right? And so again, PGMs and Brett Ledbetter, What Drives Winning, you'll get all this when you look him up. But when you do that week after week and you're talking about for 15 to 30 minutes once a week about non-basketball stuff, we had some great discussions, and it was all player led, right? We show the video, we have the prompt, and then so, at the highest levels, maybe the coaches aren't involved, but at our level, at the high school level, maybe the coach is involved, but they're just the facilitator, and the guys talk through it all, and we had some really good conversations.
Man, I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because one of my favorite parts of getting to do this is not that I take ideas from you, and I would encourage every coach to look at it this way, not that I take that idea and I have to do it exactly like that.
Yep.
But that idea, how can I use it, tweak it to where it does work for us? So TJ Rosine, I took his idea of in season having a theme for every day, Thankful Tuesday, Wisdom Wednesday, or Tough Tuesday, Wisdom Wednesday, Thankful Thursday, Fun Friday. Mondays, we've done My Commitment Mondays. And so, because for some coaches, when they hear that, take 15, 20, 30 minutes, that's the part they go, who has that, right? Like, and to their credit, like, usually time is pretty strict. And so, but for me, I always have 3 to 4 minutes. So so on Mondays, I think we're going to change it to, instead of My Commitment Mondays, it's going to be PGM's Personal Growth Mondays. They get in groups of 3 or 4, and maybe depending on what we need at that time, like we've come off a big win, and that's a focus we need to have. Shawnee Harley with Winning Matters talks about culture breakers and planning to fail. Like, what are we going to do when this happens? So how does communication break down within a team? Like, that's a great question. But we talk about the ways that our culture's not going to go right. I've always been wondering, besides me just starting out or having that, what's a way to incorporate those type of questions throughout a year? Coach, PG, coming to faith.
There we go. Yeah, we the guy who did it, we would just touch base probably 3 days before. We did it on Wednesdays, which is why we called them personal growth meetings instead of Mondays. But he would just touch base Sunday and say, hey, what's going on with the team? What can we emphasize, or what do we need to stress? And then he would put together again, and it could literally be a clip of and then just sharing kind of what that means for this week, and so very beneficial to us. Yeah.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.